Hello everybody. In this video, I'm going to review what we looked at in the previous video. However, I'm going to try to simplify it a little. Okay. So once again, I'm going to use collage techniques to create a portrait. And the first thing I'll do is create my document. So I will go to File, New, and I'm going to go to Photo, and I will use the default Photoshop size of 7 by 5 inches at 300 pixels per inch. And I'm going to make sure that I'm in this format here where it's not horizontal but rather vertical. I think that'll work better for a portrait. And I will create it. So here is my beginning of a document that I'm going to use to create a portrait. Now, to create a collage, I need a number of different images, and I'm making a portrait. So I'm going to go to my web browser, and I'm going to start looking for images that I can use to create this portrait. And I want to first start thinking about what I'll use for the head for this character. In this case, I've decided I'm going to start with a pear. And the reason being, pears have very interesting, nice, pleasing shape, and I think it'll make a fun form to use to make a portrait. Doing a search for pear, I'm going to go to images, and as I had recommended in the previous video, I recommend going to tools, size, and then using large images. Images with a higher resolution are going to give you a better result. And then I'll find a nice pear shape that I like that could be the start of this portrait. Perhaps this one here. And I think that's a nice shape. I'm looking at the resolution here, and that looks like it could be fine. So I will right-click on the image and say Save Image As, and I will save it here. Now what I want you to notice is I've actually done a lot of the work already because I don't want to waste a whole lot of time. I found all these images here a little bit earlier that I'm going to be using for this portrait. Okay, so I will save that. And I will return to Photoshop. Okay, now I'm going to open up that image of a pear, or I found some other shapes that I might also like to use. We'll choose one now. I'm going to go to File, Open. Here are the images that I found earlier. This is the one I just downloaded. You can see I have another pear here. I actually like this one a little bit better. I found it a little earlier. I'm going to use this pear for this example here. So I'll open that up. Here is my image of a pear. And what I need to do is bring this into my other document. Now you'll notice that I have two tabs now because I have two files open. I have the pear that I just opened up, and I have my Photoshop file that I created that I'm going to be using to make this portrait. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the pear, and I will bring it into the other file. Now, there are a bunch of different ways I can select parts of this image to bring over to that Photoshop file that I have, and those options are found here. These two, the second and third buttons from the top in your tools over here on the left-hand side. Let's take a look at those very, very quickly so you can see what they are. Right now I have this oval tool here. Let me select it. And you can see that I can select an oval shape, or if I hold down Shift, I can lock it so that it is a circle. And that's one way that I can make a selection. If I release it, here's my selection, and you can see I can move this around. I'm going to undo that and take a look at some of the other options. If I hold my mouse down here, you'll see I actually have a bunch of other selections as well within that same tool. So if instead of a oval or round shape, I wanted to choose a rectangular shape, I can choose that. And I could simply click and drag, and I will have a different selection. If I wish to move it, I can select my Move tool, and I can move it around. I'm going to undo that as well. In addition, I also have the third button down from the top, this button here, which is the lasso tool. Again, as I showed you in the previous video, notice that if I put my mouse over the tool, it actually tells me what the tool does. In this case, it's the lasso tool, and it has a hotkey of L if you prefer using hotkeys. I will select it, and you can see then that I can draw whatever shape I want using my mouse, and that will create a selection. If I select my Move tool, I can move that around. I'm going to undo that. If I hold my mouse down, I get a couple other options. For instance, the polygonal lasso tool, which will allow me to do more kind of geometric shapes like this. Double click to finish it. So as you can see, there are a lot of different ways I can make selections in Photoshop. I'm going to hold down my mouse, select the lasso tool, and I'm going to select, I'm going to roughly try, I don't care if I'm being entirely accurate with this because the nature of this collage assignment does not really require that everything be nice, neat, and clean. It doesn't have to be exact. We'll be going over more techniques later in the semester that'll show you more exact ways to select exactly what you want. This is a pretty good selection here, however. I'm going to drag this tab off like that so that I can see what I have here along with my working file here. Select my Move tool, and I'm simply going to drag the pair into my Photoshop file here. And now that I'm done with that, I can go ahead and close this. I don't need it anymore. So this will be the beginning of my character. As we looked at in the previous video, our tools are on the left-hand side. We're only looking at a couple of them today. And on this side, you can see that we're working in layers. And that is a very important concept when working in Photoshop. Currently, I have the background layer, which is simply white, nothing there other than a white background. And then my second layer is the pair that I just dragged in here. And you'll notice that there are some eye icons, meaning that they are visible. And if I want to hide a layer, I can click on it and hide it. Or if I click on it again and I see the eye icon, it is visible again. I can also hide the background. Now, what if I don't want my background to be white? There are a couple different ways we can change this background, but we'll keep it simple for today. I need to select the layer I am currently working on, and I will go to Edit, Fill, and I'm going to choose what my background color will be. Now, I can choose black, 50% gray, or white, or I can mix a color. I mixed a color in my previous video. This time I'm simply going to make the background black. And I'll apply it. Now, if I want to continue working on the layer 1 that has the pair on it, I will select it. If I have my Move tool selected, which is this tool here, then I can move it around wherever I want within my workspace. But what if I want to rotate it or scale it or anything like that? Okay. With the layer selected, I can go to Edit, Transform, and I can either scale it or rotate it, flip it horizontally, flip it vertically, rotate it 180 degrees, and so on and so on. So let's take a look at these tools very, very quickly. If I choose Scale, I can grab one of these corners and I can scale it to whatever size I want. If I grab it here in the middle, I can also scale it. If I hold down Shift, however, I can do non-uniform scales if I need to do that. If I decide that I don't want to do any of those, I can just escape and it'll return back to its original form. I can also go to Edit, Transform, and I can rotate it. Again, grabbing the corner, I can rotate it to whatever degrees I want. I'm going to escape out of that. Edit, Transform, remember that you can flip it vertically. I'll flip it vertically back, so it's like that. In other words, play around with those different transform tools and see what they do. Now, the one that I really like to use, however, is the Edit Free Transform, because it does a couple of those different functions, but with one single tool. So if I pick the Free Transform, I can still scale it, and I can rotate it. Now, I think this will be a good starting point for this portrait that I'm going to create. So I'm going to leave it as is and move on. Now we'll start working on the eyes. As I said, I already found some eyes that I'm going to use for this project. So what I will do is I will open up one of those images now by going to File, Open. And you can see I've got these two lizard eyes. I thought those were kind of interesting. I'll select the first one here. Here it is. And once again, I'm going to use those same tools and techniques I used with the pear. I'll select my lasso tool. Select the area that I want to bring over. Drag this tab off. Move it off to the side, select my move tool, and I'll drag the eye right in here. And there it is. Close that, open up the other one. Now remember that you do have these other options for selecting as well. I can hold my mouse down, select the elliptical marquee tool if I wanted, and I could select it that way as well. That might actually give me a pretty good selection with this. If I'm a little bit off with this, let's say I drop that there like that, I can still move it around, move my selection around a little bit. I think that's pretty good. And then select my move tool. Once again, I'll drag this off and I'll drag the eye into my scene, and there it is. Now, I'll close that. I might decide that I actually like having the eyes a different size like that, or maybe I want to scale this. That's really up to you. Those are some of the aesthetic, artistic, creative choices that you'll have to make when you make your portrait. Now, I'm going to have this layer selected and go to Edit, I'll do the Free Transform because I said I like that one the best because it does a couple things very easily. And maybe I'll just go ahead and fit those eyes in there. Do a little rotation here, press Enter. There it is. I kind of liked putting that at an angle. Maybe I'll put this eye at an angle as well. If I want to do that, however, I'm currently in this layer, so anything I do right now will be on layer 3. I need to change to layer 2. So I simply need to select the layer. And now I'm working on everything that's on layer 2. I will once again do a free transform by going to Edit, Free Transform, and maybe I'll just rotate that a little bit as well. And press Enter. You press Enter when you're done doing the operation. When you have it scaled and positioned exactly where you want, press Enter to complete that operation. So I have these two eyes. Now I will bring in a nose. Once again, I'll open up my images, the images that I found, and I could take her nose here if I wanted, but I think I'll try using this gourd shape. This is not a pear, it's a gourd, but I thought that was actually kind of an interesting shape too. That would make a really fun face, I think. But we're going to use it for the nose in this case, and I'll go ahead and just make my selection. roughly tracing it out with my mouse. Again, I really don't care if I'm exact with this. It's going to be part of the aesthetic here, that it's not perfectly, that not everything is perfectly cut with clean outlines. Okay, so I'll drag it into my scene, close this file, and position it. And yeah, you know, I kind of like that. I think that's kind of a fun nose there. I could scale it, I could rotate it, but for the time being, we'll leave it as is. If I want to rearrange the order of it, maybe have it in front of this eye or maybe behind that eye, we can play around with that. I'll simply take the layer, drag it up. It puts it in front of the eye. I kind of like that. If I wanted to put it behind the eyes, I could drag it back here. That maybe could work too. I think I like it best in the front, so I'll leave it there. One other thing that I mentioned in my previous video that I should mention now too, it starts to get a little confusing. I don't know what layer is what. To figure out what layer I would need to hide or unhide them. Sometimes it might make sense to rename your layers. I'm going to double click on this layer and call it nose. I'll select this layer, which is the left eye, and I will call it L eye. Call this one R eye. Call this the head. And this will make it easier to know what's what when I'm looking at my layers. Okay, on to the mouth. I'm going to go to File, Open, and this time I'm going to actually, instead of using one of these non-human features here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up this portrait here, and I'm going to use this person's mouth in my my composition here. Maybe this time we'll go ahead and try the rectangular marquee tool. Just to try out some of the other tools. We'll select the area that we want here. I'll drag this tab off and select my move tool, and I'll move the mouth into the composition. I'm done with that. I'll close that, and there it is. Now if I decide that I don't want this to be rectangular, I can still come in here, use my lasso tool, and roughly outline the areas that I want to keep. You can see if I take my move tool, I can move it off of there like that. And I'll undo that. Because the problem is if I delete that, I delete the mouth. I'm going to undo that. I don't want to do that. I need to invert my selection. So what I will do is I will go to Select, Inverse, and I'll delete what I don't want on there. Now I still have I still have a selection here which can make it a little difficult to work with. I need to deselect. I can go to Select, Deselect, or Control D. Control D will also deselect. Either method will work. I'll go ahead and just click on deselect. It's deselected. You can see that if I select another area, if I want to deselect it, instead of coming here to select, I can just simply hit Control D, and that will deselect. So this is the beginning of my portrait here. Now perhaps we can start playing around with the features placement, have some fun with that. We'll add some other features in here as well, and we'll just take it from there. Now, one of the fun things about this assignment is that it's not just finding the parts to create the face, but it's also the placement and seeing how much character you can get just by rescaling and moving the different parts. Let's take a look at that real quick and see what we can do. This is a good beginning, and I kind of like what we have going on here, but I think that we can have some fun with this. So I'm going to select the right eye layer here. I just simply clicked on the layer. I'll come over here to Edit, Free Transform, and let's see what happens if we make the eyes smaller, more kind of beady eyes. So I'll scale it down, maybe move the eye here, I think that's probably good, and we'll do the same to the other eye as well. Now I want to show you another way that you can select layers. You don't have to come over here and select them like this. Another way that you can select them is, I'm going to select my move tool, right click on the layer that you want. It'll give you some different options. Everything where you clicked, it'll click and show you the layer. You can see I can select the LI layer, which is the one I want, or the head layer, the background layer. I can select any one of these three layers because I clicked on all three of them. I want the top one. I want the LI, so I'll select that. And once again, I'm going to use my free transform, and we'll scale that down as well. When I'm done with the operation, I press enter, and there it is. Let's do the same to the nose. I'll right click on it and select that layer, go to edit, free transform, and perhaps I'll scale it down. Or I could, if I wanted, even play around with the orientation of it. Maybe I want the nose to be like that. I think I actually prefer it in this orientation. I'll move the nose up and just play around with the size and placement of it. We'll give maybe a smaller nose like that. Press enter. And I'll select the mouth and start playing around with its placement. Maybe once again I'll try the free transform, and because the pear gives us this nice big shape, this nice area to work with, I think I'll try giving my character a bigger mouth here. Maybe something like that. What happens if we take the eyes and we bring them higher up? And select the nose and bring that higher up. You can see that just by placing these different features on different parts of the face here and playing around with the size and shape of them, you can actually get a lot of variety. I'm going to go ahead and stick with this, but I would suggest when you do this that you just have fun with it, play around with it, create lots and lots of different portraits. Okay, we'll bring in some more of the files that I saved. I've got this one of a shirt. I'll bring that in. I'll drag it off the tab, that is, and I'm just going to take the whole thing and drag it in here. You can see how big it is. We actually need it probably larger. So I will do my free transform on it. Grab the corner, make it larger. I think that should work. I'll press enter, and I want it to be behind the head here. Here's my head layer. Why don't I rename this while I'm at it? I'll call it shirt. Drag the layer down below head. Now it's behind it. That looks a whole lot better. I want to get rid of this white background that was on the shirt image. So I'll select my lasso tool, and I'll just select the areas I want to delete. And hit the delete key. And there it is. It wasn't very neat about that. I think that's okay. However, if I want to get a little bit more exact, I can come in here and do so. I'll just do another selection and delete that. Perhaps do the same over here. And delete that. And there we go. Our character now has a shirt. Let's bring in the ears. I got two different ears. I'm going to use one for the left side and the other for the right side, I think. Here's the first ear that I have. Let's go ahead and select the area we want using our lasso tool. I'll go to the other ear. I'll select the areas that I want for that ear as well. And I'll drag these two tabs off like that. Maybe just move them off a little here like that. Select my move tool. Bring this ear into my file, and I'll drag this ear in as well. As we can see, they're both different sizes. I'm going to move the layers around a little bit so I can see it a little better. I'll scale this ear by using the free transform. Decide what size I actually want these ears. I think that could be good. Or maybe I'll make them very small. I'll make the ears very small for this character. Or maybe I make them very large. That's all up to you. Perhaps that's a good size. I'm going to flip this ear, edit, transform, flip horizontal, and I'll use my free transform to place it, as well as doing a little rotation for it. Select the other ear. Actually, while I'm at it, let's go ahead and rename this R ear. I didn't name the mouth. I'll go ahead and name that as well. I have the other ear here. Let me just drag that up a little, and we'll go ahead and place that one as well. Might as well name it L ear. We'll use our free transform to rotate and scale it. And there it is. Okay, let's bring in some hair for this character. And for that, I found this picture of a porcupine. So I'm going to open that up. Here it is. I think this would make some nice hair. I'm going to make a selection using my lasso tool. I'm not trying to be exact. I'm just kind of giving it a rough outline here. For the sake of this collage, I think that'll work fine. Okay, I have my selection. I'll drag the tab off, select my move tool, and I'll move it into my composition here. I'm going to put this layer underneath the head here. And I actually kind of like that. It's funny having that face there. Maybe I leave it like that. I can do some scaling first with this perhaps, and just play around with the size of it, see if I like bigger hair. Actually, I kind of like that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to press enter. I'm going to duplicate this layer. I can duplicate it by selecting the layer here, right-clicking, duplicate layer. You can see here's my second layer. I'm going to flip it horizontally, edit, transform, flip horizontal, and I'll just move it into place like this. Now if I want to have a part down the middle, let's say, I could just select some of this area here and delete. Okay, I'm going to open up this caterpillar that I found, and I think that might be fun to try to use that as eyebrows or a mustache. So I'll go ahead and open that up, make a selection of it. Drag the tab off, drag it into my scene, drag the layer up more towards the top, use my free transform, and place it. Another way of duplicating is to simply select your Move tool, hold down the Alt button. You'll see that my cursor changed, and then just left mouse drag. I'm going to flip this horizontally and place it. If we want to really quickly try this as a mustache and see if that looks good, I can select my 2 layers here, duplicate them, and move them down. I'm not going to give my character a mustache, so I'll just drag those layers into the garbage there. And I'm almost done. I still might play around with the features a little bit. For instance, I might select the mouth and just play around with its placement. What happens if I put the mouth, make it smaller and put it down here? That gives the character a very different personality. Or if I put the mouth up here, that also gives the character a very different personality. You can see how just slight changes can really make a big change to the personality of your character. I'll put it there. What I like about this is that he has this big pronounced chin. Now, when I'm done creating my portrait, what I can do is save the Photoshop file by going to File, Save As, tell it where to save it. I'm just going to call it Portrait. This is a Photoshop file. This is a working file. When I save this, it's going to keep all of these layers. However, I can also save this as an image, and that is what you would typically be turning into me. So I'll do that as well. I will go to File, Save As, and under the Save As Type drop-down, I'm going to save it as a JPEG. Keep the same name. And now I have both a Photoshop file and an image file. One of the things I like about this assignment is that it's a great way to learn how to bring in images into your Photoshop file. It's a great way of learning how to some simple selection tools in Photoshop, as well as adjusting the different layers. I think this is a great exercise for learning all those tools and techniques while also creating something that's fun and hopefully visually appealing. I really recommend you play around with these tools and make lots and lots of different images. For instance, I like this. I like what I've created here, but I still might try pushing it a little further. And I'll just give you a quick example of that. I might select the head layer, for example, and I'll come over here to Edit, Transform, or rather I'll do the free transform. I like that probably the best. And I'll just rotate the head down here, maybe place it down a little like that, and press Enter. And you can see that even just that simple adjustment of rotating this around creates a very different character. I still might come in here then and just start adjusting the placement of these objects, of these facial features, to see how I can create, let's say, a different character. Simply using the tools and techniques that we've been covering in this video. And as you can see, in no time, I've got an entirely new character, even though I'm just using the same layers as the previous example. So I hope that this video has been useful for you, and thank you for watching.